We begin tonight with the Democrat who is trying to make a name for himself by helping Republicans kill health reform.
There are at least 12 of us who voted for health care who have indicated to the leadership and others that unless you fix this abortion language, we can't vote for a final version of the bill.
Democratic Congressman Bart Stupak of Michigan. Bart Stupak. If you have never heard of Bart Stupak before, it's probably because he's sort of a backbencher. He has been sort of a backbencher, anonymous, under-the-radar congressman who has never really made a political splash anywhere before. The closest he ever came to making a splash before this, well, the only time he ever crossed my radar at least, was when he volunteered a random, out-of-nowhere, anti-gay comment to me during the Mark Foley scandal when I had my radio show on Air America and I was interviewing him about something else.
Look, I don't mean this disrespectful, but, I've been on the Hill for 14 years, and we all know Mark Foley has a different lifestyle than most of us. And when this should have set off all kinds of alarms. But if you know the person has a little different lifestyle, you know that you warn the pages when they come in that don't get too friendly with this guy.
That lifestyle should have set off all kinds of alarms. That was weird. I've remembered it all these years. And I actually thought that would be the last I ever heard of old Bart Stupak. But over the past 5 months or so, Bart Stupak, lo and behold, has found a way to finally make himself famous. It started in roughly November when he introduced the Stupak Amendment in the House to try to make health reform into a vehicle to effectively ban abortion. There had been sort of a consensus in Washington that whatever the fight about abortion is in this country, that fight would not be superimposed onto the fight over health reform. But Bart Stupak threw that consensus out the window and decided that this was going to be his vehicle, that he could hijack health reform to show off his anti-abortion politics and make himself famous. Bart Stupak got his moment in the sun. It was all over TV, all over the news, and he got his anti-abortion language put into the House bill. Then, almost immediately, he floated the idea of running for governor of Michigan. Glory, glory! And now, after a few months of what it used to be like for Bart Stupak, with no one paying attention to him anymore, Bart Stupak has come back. He's having another moment in the spotlight right now, and he appears to be loving it.
Does that mean you're prepared to take responsibility for bringing down this whole bill?
Yes, we're prepared to take responsibility. I've been catching it ever since last fall. Let's face it, I want to see health care. Yeah, but we're not going to bypass some principles and beliefs that we feel strongly about.
Whatever Bart Stupak's principles and views on abortion, it is not rational to think that the Democratic-led House and the Democratic-led Senate are going to let him use health reform as a way to effectively ban abortion. They're just not going to, as evidenced by the fact that the Senate took his language out of the bill that they passed. And as evidenced by senior Democratic Senator Tom Harkin today saying, quote, Mr. Stupak is, sadly, totally misinformed. Bart Stupak is not going to be allowed to kill health reform in order to mount this anti-abortion stunt. It's not going to happen. But even if he doesn't kill health reform, Mr. Stupak knows that this is his chance to get on TV a lot again. The problem with Bart Stupak trying to make himself famous by trying to hijack health reform with this anti-abortion stunt is that all of the stuff you're able to get away with as an under-the-radar politician who nobody really knows nationally, all of those things are harder to get away with once you are above the radar. You do end up having to answer for some of the unexplained things that no one cared to have you explain before. For example, Bart Stupak famously was one of the conservative politicians who lived at C Street, a $1.8 million townhouse on Capitol Hill that featured in the Mark Sanford sex scandal and the John Ensign sex scandal and the Chip Pickering sex scandal. The house is home to a number of members of Congress. It has been reported to be run by the secretive religious group known as the Family. Bart Stupak has confirmed that he did in fact live at C Street.
Can you tell us what your relationship is with the controversial C Street religious cult known as Sir Family?
Sure.
Thank you.
I live there. I rent a room there.
Okay.
And there is no such thing as the Family. I do not belong to any group called the Family. I do not belong to any international group. I do not belong to any theocracy. I'm a Catholic, always been a Catholic, and I still practice my faith. I rent a room. That's really about it. So there is no family, there is no theocracy that I'm part of.
As you heard there, Mr. Stupak confirming that he lives at C Street, but denying any involvement with the family. Author Jeff Charlotte, who went undercover inside the family, tells a very different story about Congressman Stupak. He describes Bart Stupak as having been a, quote, family-assigned mentor to one of my brothers there. When asked about that reporting, a spokesman for Mr. Stupak responded by saying the congressman will not have any further comment on the matter. Since then, Washington, D.C. housing authorities have started asking some questions about Mr. Stupak's home. You see, C Street is officially listed for tax purposes as a church. It is therefore fully tax exempt. Or I should say, it was fully tax exempt. After looking into that townhouse's churchiness, D.C. officials decided to strip C Street of some of its tax exempt status, leaving only 1/3 of the house free of taxes. Then last week, a group of 13 pastors from Ohio sent a letter to the IRS asking the IRS to strip the house fully of its federal tax exempt status, arguing that it's incongruous to describe the C Street house as a church when, for example, there doesn't appear to be any public worship there, nor do there appear to be any trained religious leaders serving any church there. And this group is not kidding. Their lawyer on this matter is the guy who used to be in charge of religious exemptions at the IRS. So in response to this challenge to C Street and in response to all this controversy now swirling around C Street, Congressman Stupak has put out a statement saying that he's moved out. He says he's moved out of C Street because of the controversy. He added for good measure that he never signed an oath of secrecy concerning C Street or its residents, which is good to know. Now that Congressman Stupak is newly famous, he does not want to be associated with C Street anymore, even though he lived there for years. But here's the rub. Here's the issue. In addition to the is this thing a church tax exemption issue, the Ohio pastor's complaint to the IRS raises one other really good point, and I think it's worth paying attention to. Everyone who's been living at C Street, including Bart Stupak, has been getting a sweetheart deal. This is a $1.8 million townhouse. There are rooms, these are rooms in this really swanky townhouse that come with meals, that come with maid service, meeting rooms, common spaces. It's a very nice place. How much do you think that's worth on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., just blocks away from the Capitol building? How about $600 a month? $600 a month, really? I paid that for a not very nice room and a third-floor walk-up on a not very safe block of Guerrero Street in the Mission in San Francisco in 1995. That's what Bart Stupak was reportedly paying to live in a swanky Capitol Hill mansion last year. Bart Stupak was not just paying to live there. Somebody else was presumably helping to pay his rent while he was living there. You can't pay that kind of way below market rent unless you're being subsidized by someone. That's an in-kind donation to a member of Congress. That means that for every single month he was living there, and he lived there for years, Bart Stupak was apparently receiving an in-kind, very generous donation of rent. Someone was paying for Bart Stupak to live in this fake church. Who was it? The family responded to the Ohio pastor's letter by saying now that they have nothing to do with the C Street house. So if it's not the family, then who was subsidizing Bart Stupak's rent? And did he ever report that subsidy as an in-kind donation or as income? If it wasn't the family, who exactly was Bart Stupak writing his rent checks to? We reached out to Bart Stupak's office tonight to ask him these questions. We will let you know what we hear. Joining us now is Ed Brayton. He is the state editor for the Michigan Messenger. He also hosts a political radio show up in Michigan, and he's done lots and lots of reporting on Bart Stupak's ties to C Street and the family. Mr. Brayton, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
I understand that you started looking into Mr. Stupak's ties to C Street long before anybody on the national level even knew who Bart Stupak was. How forthcoming was he about C Street back then?
Well, my experience with him was very much like what you just reported. He wanted nothing to do with it. When the C Street story first broke last summer after Stanford and Ensign and all of that, I immediately contacted, of course, being from Michigan, I wanted to know. I immediately contacted his spokesperson, and I got a no comment from them. They clearly didn't want to talk about it. About 2 weeks later, his office hosted a teleconference for reporters to talk about several different issues, not that one, of course. And I decided this was my opportunity to get to ask him that question, so I joined that teleconference. And when it came my turn to ask a question, I asked him about that. I asked him about his living at the C Street house, about his connections to the family, about how he felt about the family's long history of ties to brutal dictators from the Third World, that sort of thing. And his answer really astonished me. His answer was, I don't even know what you're talking about. He didn't, he admitted, yes, I do live at the C Street house, but he said, all I do is rent a room there. I don't know anything about the people that I pay the rent to. I don't know who this family is you're talking about. I don't know anything about all this religion stuff. Total ignorance, he claimed, of anything going on there whatsoever, which I found rather astonishing.
As I indicated in the introduction, in which it sounds like you're sort of with me on this, there are questions to ask